Hey up, I'm Guy Kestevan, the Testaman, and today we're in the workshop having a butcher's at the specialised Stumpjumper 15 Evo Expert. Because not only is this a super capable, wonderfully easy to ride, and remarkably geo and suspension adjustable all-rounder, in a way that not only makes a real difference, but is also an absolute breeze to access. It's also possibly the best carbon fibre, pedal-powered pork and pastry delivery machine anyone has ever made. Right, so I've been slightly late doing this, and the intro ride has already been out for a few days now. However, that gives me the perfect opportunity to respond to a couple of things that have cropped up a lot in the comments. And first up, if you're a cable transmission lover, this is where you may as well stop watching the video and just start typing angry things in the comments. Because this bike, although it doesn't have headset routing, and it has internal cable routing for the dropper cable and the rear brake, does not have any internal cable routing for the rear mech. This is a wireless only frame. It works with Shimano Di2. It works with SRAM Axis, as we see here. But if you want your lever to be connected with metal string to your rear derailleur, carbon Stumpjumper is not for you. And I'm not going to get drawn into the politics of whether I think this is a good idea or not. I mean, obviously, it does set a limit on the base price potential of this bike, which is something I don't normally endorse. But the alloy frame Stumpjumper does have wire cable routing, and I kind of see why Specialized thought, well, the carbon bikes are probably going to be bundled with wireless, whereas the alloy bikes are probably going to appeal to those more blue-collar folks who like everything to be mechanical and made of metal. But I'll let you argue over that in the comments. One thing I would like to reinforce is that this is a significantly different frame to the previous Stumpjumper and Stumpjumper Evo. So while the geometry is relatively similar and the suspension kinematic is modified slightly compared to the Stumpjumper, but it's more or less the same as the Stumpjumper Evo, which I think is a very good thing, because that was a much more positive pedaling bike anyway, and that's shared with this frame. The big difference is you no longer have that kind of swashbuckling sidearm reinforcement strut swinging out from the frame and going around the shock there, and that's simply because this new Genie can is so fat it didn't work with that frame design. It would have come out too far, it would have rubbed on your knees, it would have been a nightmare. And that also means that you can't retrofit this Genie can into an existing Stumpjumper Evo. There are also some detail changes, so while overall stiffness has been maintained, it's a little bit softer at the rear and a little bit firmer at the front, just to get the dynamic handling balance they wanted. And also they've slightly changed that shock yoke and linkage setup there, so it's a little more compliant side to side, which reduces any structural loads on the shock and means it should last a lot longer. But apart from that, frame weight is essentially the same, despite the stiffness and strength being very, very similar. And you've got a bunch of practical features. So you've got belly armour down there, and there's even an extra piece of armour that you get in the care package, which you can put under the frame here to protect it if you do a lot of uplifting with a pickup truck. So that's your sort of tailgate protection. You've got a handy flap at the rear there, slightly flexible, just to stop grit and stones getting stuck between the chainstay and the back of the shock there, and also keeps a little bit of the filth out of that rear brake routing. You get a really good protector that wraps all the way around there. You see it's got those nice lumpy bits there to keep the chain quiet. As another smaller protector on that underside there, because actually, fun fact, that's where most of the chain slap noise comes from. You've got ISCG mounts down in there if you want to fit a chain guide, and this bike comes as standard. As you can see, I've already used it there on that intro ride. That was a fair old boulder hit, but because you've got that little segment bolted onto the chain set, that took the hit, not the chainring and the chain. So and that's removable if you don't want it on there. It doesn't weigh much at all, and as you can see, it definitely serves a purpose. And because it's removable, you only get one. Full cranks aftermarket come with two, but because it's removable, if you run goofy stance or left foot forward, you can flip it round so it's on the underside there when your leading foot is down, which is a nice touch. You've got nice big replaceable bearings all the way around, and the whole frame is covered with a lifetime warranty, as are these specialised Roval rims. And also, while it might not be immediately obvious, it's got a shorter seat tube as well, so you can fit a lot longer dropper posts in there without any clearance issues. And then you've also got, as I mentioned at the start, a huge amount of geometry adjustment. So you've got a high-low flip chip at the rear FSR pivot there, which you can either use to just change the bottom bracket height if you know, without switching wheel size, or if you move to a mullet back end, then if you flip that chip, it basically restores the geometry to where you started from. So that changes your bottom bracket height. I mean, it's relatively high. It's grown a little bit because it's now got a 160mm fork in the front. It has grown a bit from the standard Stumpjumper 15, which was, I think, 337, 330. So it's now 340 or 333 from memory. And then, when you get up to the head tube there, that plate inside the head tube there, with the bike, you get this little adjuster. So you've got a +1 degree or a -1 degree cup, depending on how you fit that into the frame. So while it comes stock with a 64-degree head angle, it can run to 63 or 65-degree head angle. So with the 3 head angle positions, and then the high and low chip at the rear, you've got 6 different potential geometry settings, from sort of steeper, higher trail to fully slammed and slacked out, downhill styly. And they're both genuinely easy to do trail side, or at least in the car park between runs. And that's why this bike is going to be brilliant for a whole series of geometry and bike setup features that I've got coming up. But not only are we talking about adjustment of the geometry, because not only does this Float X Genie shock have both low speed compression and rebound adjustment, you also get in your tuning kit, exclusively to this Genie design, as well as your standard shock volume spacers, you get these clip-on rings here. And these are what sit inside the Genie shock to change the spring rate on that first 70% of the stroke. After that, you've got a 30% ramp up, however you set up the shock, but by adding or removing spacers into that shock, you get a more linear kind of coil-like feel, which is how it comes set up with just one spacer in there. Or if you fully pack it out, it basically runs the same as a conventional air shock if you want a tighter, sort of firmer feel for your riding. And again, that's something, along with the basics like sag, rebound, low speed compression, that I'll be covering in a series of videos I've got planned for this bike. And then up front, you've got Fox Float 36 with the Grip X2 damper. So again, you've got high speed compression, low speed compression, and then if we go down to the base of the fork leg here, under this big screw-on dustbin, you've got high speed and low speed rebound as well. So basically, all the adjustment of the factory series fork, just with black anodized stanchions rather than those gold Kashima anodized stanchions. And that, all the performance without the excess price, kind of really sums up the rest of the build on this bike. You've got SRAM GX, already pointed out, So you got SRAM GX, not the lightest chain set, but not, alloy is going to take a serious amount of knocks. You've got that bash guard on it. It comes in varying lengths depending on the sizing, as does the saddle, as does the dropper post length, and as do the bar widths. You've got GX, Axis wireless at the rear, T-type, so it's bolted directly onto the frame with the matching T-type cassette. So it's stiffer, it's stronger, the mech is fully rebuildable, and with the cassette mapping that you've got there, that means it gives phenomenal shifting under power. It actually gets better the more torque you're putting through the system. So it is a little bit slower than previous SRAM Axis, although the update does make a big difference. So if you do get this bike, check what firmware it's running, because if you download the latest firmware, you will get a significant boost in shifting speed. But either way, you've just got an absolutely flawless shift, however late you leave it, or however much wattage you're putting through that flat top chain when you try and get the cog to move. Then you've got SRAM massive Maven brakes, you've got a 200mm rotor both ends, and then even though it's only the silver, which sounds like it's the basic brake, you've still got lever reach adjust with super smooth cartridge bearings and bike point adjust as well. So you can adjust that little dial there to set up where you want the pads to contact the rotors. And also to match that new sort of more gravity focus of this Evo model with the longer fork and the piggyback shock, which basically means you've got an oil reserve on the shock, so it can handle more heat without any changes in the damping. So if you're doing really long descents or coming down from altitude, then you'll benefit from that extra oil on there. It does add some weight. This bike overall is about 400 grams heavier than the equivalent Stumpjumper 15. But if you're doing a lot of descending or hitting big stuff repeatedly, you're going to appreciate the extra control of that piggyback shock. And you get a higher rise bar as well. I mean, it's only 50mm. But it significantly lifts your body position up and back a little bit, makes it easier to pop that front wheel up, and just gives you a more centered position in the steep stuff. And it's something that more and more riders are moving toward. Even if I'm honest, it isn't quite my cup of tea. Final bit of essential control architecture. You've got a really nice PNW dropper post there with a little customizable thumb pad on it. It's one of my favorite dropper posts. Super reliable, adjustable travel on it, and fun fact, the guys who set up P&W used to work at Specialized. Oh, and up top you've got Specialized saddle. It's the bridge saddle there, and just Specialized, absolutely awesome saddles. Have been since, God, I used to have a Prolong back in about 1990, and been a big fan of Specialized saddles ever since then. And then back to the wheels, you've got an Eliminator Grid Trail T7, so relatively fast rolling, but still chunky enough on the sides. You've got DT Swiss 370 hubs, and then, like I say, lifetime warranted Specialized rims. And then up front, for maximum control, you've got that Butcher Grid Trail T9, properly sticky, big lugs, and just both tyres have a superbly damped and high control feel. So if you've already watched my intro video, you'll see the real takeaway on this bike is just how easy and how comfortably competent and confident this bike feels, even in slippery, sketchy situations. This just totally feels, even in the default setup, even before you start playing around with all the different adjustments, this just feels like a super easy bike to ride. Whether that's traction on climbs, absolutely tons of grip through the turns, or just a really, really smooth and well-centered ride. And Specialized do have an absolutely phenomenal reputation for customer service. In fact, I remember the customer service job coming up on Bike Biz or something like that, and I thought, oh, this will be an interesting read through. And I'd kind of had a quick look at the application, and just literally kind of their customer service specification manual was 37 pages long. That's the amount of detail they go into about looking after people. And then last but not least, especially for people who like to take their essentials with them and know that they're covered for basic mechanical necessities, you've got the specialised SWAT system, which stands for, what does it stand for? Storage, water and tools. So you've got the bottle cage there included with the bike. You don't get the bottle, but I'm sure your specialised dealer might throw one in if you're spending £6 on a bike. But you get that little essential mini tool that just clips in the back of the cage there. And then you've got this internal storage. And Specialised were the first to introduce internal storage, and you get this handy little bag, comes with the frame, and you can put your CO2 cartridges, you put whatever you want in there, and that just keeps it nice and clean and safe inside. Or you can use it, you can use it for your jackets, or you can use it for your snacks. And because not only is it really neatly designed, so it's really lightweight and that catch takes up minimal space, because a lot of other manufacturers are using a similar system now. However, I still think nobody does it as well as Specialised. So not only can you fit one award-winning sausage roll, it's from Kendall's Butchers, my local, in there, you can get another one down there, and then, to be honest, I reckon there's room for a fourth upstream here, but I've already got something of a reputation with Specialised for forgetting sausage rolls hidden in frames, which didn't go down that well, as you might imagine. But not only is this frame super easy to ride, super easy to adjust in a really wide range of useful geometry and suspension modifications, it's got a great lifetime warranty on most of the parts, but also it's one of the most nutritious trail bikes that you can buy. God, that's good.